The doctrine of the Incarnation, a uniquely Christian belief, took up this Jewish heritage and added a new dimension and depth to it. Not only was God intimately concerned with and involved in human welfare, and especially the welfare of the most vulnerable of human beings, but he himself had become a human being, and at that, one of that group of the most vulnerable. He had not only lived in poverty and died at the hands of the Roman oppressors in one of the most cruel forms of execution devised by man, but he had explicitly identified himself with the least of society. I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these my brethren, you did it to me. The Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 25, verses 35 through 36 and 40. Although such statements were a target for mockery in the ancient Greco-Roman world, they were an inspiration to early Christians and a foundational aspect of Christian moral philosophy. Such an understanding of God allowed Christians two major advantages over their religious competitors in the Roman Empire. First, Christianity was able to give meaning to suffering, even immense suffering, and simultaneously offer the hope and comfort of an eternal heavenly reward, whereas the various pagan cults and philosophies could offer neither of these. Second, Christians were motivated to charity even at the risk of their own safety. As an example, both of these advantages came into play during the plague that struck the Roman Empire in the second half of the 3rd century. Pontius the Deacon, hagiographer of Cyprian of Carthage, who was bishop of Carthage in North Africa at the onset of the plague, wrote of the plague and the reactions of pagans to it. There broke out a dreadful plague. An excessive destruction of a hateful disease invaded every house in succession of the trembling populace, carrying off day by day, with abrupt attack, numberless people, every one from his own house. All were shuddering, fleeing, shunning the contagion, impiously exposing their own friends, as if with the exclusion of the person who was sure to die of the plague, one could exclude death itself also. There lay about the meanwhile over the whole city no longer bodies, but the carcasses of many, and by the contemplation of a lot which in their turn would be theirs, demanded the pity of the passers-by for themselves. No one regarded anything besides his cruel gains. No one trembled at the remembrance of a similar event. No one did to another what he himself wished to experience. While the pagans frantically fled for their lives, the Christian response was far different. According to a letter written by Dionysius, the Christian bishop of Alexandria, Egypt, during the plague, most of our brother Christians showed unbounded love and loyalty, never sparing themselves and thinking only of one another. Heedless of the danger, they took charge of the sick, attending to their every need and ministering to them in Christ, and with them departed this life serenely happy, for they were infected by others with the disease, drawing on themselves the sickness of their neighbors and cheerfully accepting their pains. With willing hands they raised the bodies of the saints to their bosoms. They closed their eyes and mouths, and carried them on their shoulders, and laid them out. They clung to them, embraced them, washed them, and wrapped them in grave clothes. In offering an explanation and consolation in the midst of the crises that shook the Roman world in the 2nd through 4th centuries, Christianity proved its philosophical viability to the detriment of its competitors. In offering care to the sick and dying of both their own co-religionists and their pagan neighbors, Christians created close relationships with these pagan neighbors and impressed them with their bravery, charity, and optimism even in the face of death. Both of these intangible factors created tangible returns in the conversions of pagans to Christianity. Though the question of what motivated Roman pagans to convert to Christianity in its early centuries has been answered, the question remains of how these conversions, most of them among the unprivileged classes and categories of Roman society, translated into the official adoption of Christianity by the Roman Empire. How did a religion, to use Celsus's words quoted earlier, of foolish and low individuals and persons devoid of perception, and slaves and women and children, become the favored religion of the world's most powerful empire? It seems that the triumph of Christianity in the Roman Empire, as well as in the nations beyond the borders of the Roman Empire, was indeed affected by the influence of women and slaves. According to the account of Eusebius of Caesarea, a Christian bishop and the father of church history, the Roman Emperor Constantine I witnessed a vision of a cross bearing the inscription, "Conquer by this," in the sky, while praying before an important battle in 306 CE. As a result, he had Christian symbols set up on the standards of his army. In 313 CE, Constantine, along with his co-ruler Licinius, issued the famous Edict of Milan, finally legalizing Christianity in the Roman Empire. Throughout his reign, Constantine favored the Christian Church and was intimately involved in its affairs, including his convocation of the First Ecumenical Council at Nicaea in 325 CE. He was finally baptized, becoming himself a member of the church he had done so much to support shortly before his death in 337 CE. The new course upon which Constantine had set the empire during his long reign was irreversible. With the exception of the brief reign of Julian the Apostate as sole emperor in 361 to 363 CE, the Roman Empire would remain officially Christian, and the Roman emperor an important figure within the Christian Church itself from the time of Constantine to the collapse of the eastern half of the empire in 1453. Did a single supposed vision, completely out of nowhere, on a battlefield in Italy, cause all of this? The answer is both yes and no. Rather than being completely out of nowhere, it seems that Constantine had already been exposed to the Christian faith, and perhaps, if a measure of conjecture can be allowed, at least somewhat indoctrinated into it in his early years. His mother Helena was a Christian, though the date of her conversion is debated, and she may have provided him with a certain amount of Christian education during his childhood. His half-sister, Anastasia, bore a uniquely Christian name, which in Greek means resurrection. This may indicate that his sister and/or his stepmother, Theodora, who would have been responsible for the naming of her daughter, were Christians as well. Church historian Henry Chadwick's statement that it was often through the wives that Christianity penetrated the upper classes of society in the first instance seems to apply equally well to the last and most important instance. Another interesting example of the influence that these lower-class converts had upon the eventual triumph of Christianity occurred outside of the Roman Empire in Axum, the kingdom which would eventually rule a united Ethiopia, one of the most important Christian kingdoms in later centuries. Two brothers, Frumentius and Aedesius, Christians originally from Syria, were taken captive and enslaved by the king there. One of them, Frumentius, possessing an education, was assigned as the tutor of the king's young son, Ezana. Years later, when Ezana came of ruling age, he converted to Christianity along with the rest of his royal court, and in about 330 CE declared Christianity the official religion of the Aksumite Empire. Just as it seems that Christianity had become the official religion of Rome via the influence of women, so it seems that Christianity became the official religion of Ethiopia via the influence of slaves. In spite of the fact that Christianity and its principles, such as the innate equality of human beings due to the Imago Dei and the condescension of God to man and the Incarnation, were often baffling and even antithetical to the worldview of the majority of ancient Romans, it seems that Christianity triumphed because of these same doctrines, so challenging to Roman ways of life, were overwhelmingly attractive to the lower classes and outsiders of Roman society, such as slaves and women. It was in turn through the subtle but effective influence of these Christian women and slaves that the traditional social order of the Roman Empire was gradually eroded, and that Christianity reached the ears and hearts of those with the power to effect permanent and widespread change. The story of the rise of Christianity is, in conclusion, the story of how slaves and women infiltrated the ruling classes of the world's most powerful and important empire, forever changing the course of Western civilization.